Hello, everyone. Welcome to 50 Days to 50. Thursdays are crazy days for me. I do 3 live streams in the morning. I kind of don't remember if I'm talking about art or alcoholism or turning 50, but I'm turning 50. That's what we're talking about now. And I'm really, really thrilled. As always, all my guests I'm thrilled about. But this one is particularly interesting to me because she's a mentor and a friend and a colleague and all kinds of things. So please welcome my friend, Linda Boyd, to the camera. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Dana. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm terrific.
Good.
I'm in my 60s. I'm even better.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I've talked to a number of people, not yet live, but had a number of conversations with people in their 60s who say to me, 50 was nothing, 60 was something, or 70 feels like something, or whatever. So I think the interesting thing about these conversations is that 50 just feels like a big deal to me because it's my next jump. But once you're past it, and then it just is what it is.
Well, yeah, I remember 50 feeling like a pretty big deal and pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm not unexcited about it. I'm just aware of it. It feels like a funny thing. I think I feel like people in their 50s should have a lot more put together than I feel like I do. But, you know, maybe everybody feels that way, in which case, as with many things in life, we're all putting on some kind of weird facade and all feeling the same insecurities as everybody else.
Yeah. So it's interesting because in thinking about today's conversation, I thought, of course, back to my 50s, which was the decade between 2006 and 2016.
Okay.
And so those 10 years saw me on the city commission, business going great guns until it didn't, on the school board, some of the highest highs and lowest lows in my life, and finding my life partner finally in my late 50s. And so I think it's kind of when all those things that had been my life and my pursuits thus far really came to fruition. I think it was, all the big highlights and accomplishments, kind of all the big culminations, and all my best work, I think, for the most part, was in my 50s.
Fantastic. I'm going to adopt that model. As often, you set a tone for me to adopt, and I'm going to take it, Linda.
I remember my dad. So I'm an only child, and my folks were a little bit older when I was born. So my mom was around 40, and my mom was around 30, had just turned 30, and my dad was 40. So I came home from, I don't know, work, graduate school somewhere. I was in my mid 20s, and Dad had just been offered some big opportunity that it would have been some sort of big deal. And he, worked hard all his life and everything. And I can imagine him saying, man, if I were just 50 again, I'd probably do it. And to me, it sounded like, man, if I were just 85 again, it sounded ridiculous to me. But now I realize it's like, yeah, you've got the wisdom and the energy at 50 to do almost anything.
Yeah.
So I just remembered how weird that sounded and how normal it sounds now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's perspective is everything. I mean, if you're lucky at 50, you've kind of empty nested. If you've had kids, maybe you've got a little bit of money, you can kind of put your head up and look around a little bit differently than you can at almost any earlier time. Unless you were one of those, I'm going to go on the record, crazy people who waited to have kids till you were, like mid to late 30s, in which case your 50s are probably going to be bonkers. But, everybody does what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say something and it flew right out of my head.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions for you, Linda.
Sure.
You've touched on them a little bit, but maybe you have some other things to say. So what are one or two of the most important lessons that you learned in the first 50 years that have proven invaluable in this second half?
Boy, that's a tough one. I'm such a linear person, keep moving forward, that and probably not as reflective as I should be. So the idea of lessons is really interesting. To me, it's just kind of this continuum. In looking back, I think I've realized how important it is to treat people as if you're in partnership with them, no matter what, whether it's someone you're working with, someone you're even just having a conversation with, and just to be kind. I could be a little abrupt, and all the regrets I have in looking back when I've done stupid things, it's just when I haven't treated people the way that I feel like I should have.
Oh, Linda, it's like you've held up a mirror. It's probably why I like you. You often say things that I think, oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Drilled right in and settled about here.
Well, and it's funny because I was thinking of, the career path and the life path and all that stuff, and kind of getting my thoughts together. And I realized what I'm not. What I'm not is any kind of planner. I don't have goals. I don't have a vision board. I don't make plans at all. I'm just not wired that way. My daughter's a planner. People I know and respect are big planners. I just am not. I'm too much in the moment and just looking at the squirrel. That has kind of determined my life path more than anything.
Well, it's interesting because what has largely determined my life path is just a reaction to whatever will get me away from what I don't want.
Oh.
So, like for instance, I never wanted to teach, would not get an education degree. Of course, had my son right out of my first undergrad, and so had to go back to school, got an education degree. And to avoid teaching, I went to graduate school. And then I initially took the job at the Arts Partnership because the application said it was part-time. And I didn't want a full-time job. So I thought, fine, this will give me a job if I can get it. And it will shut the people up in my life who keep telling me I have to get a job. And so much of what I say yes to is simply to say no to something else. And I'm really working to change that. I don't like that quality very much. I want to choose something because it's what I'm choosing, not because it gets me away from the thing I don't want to choose. I want to just say, I don't want that. That's more interesting to me. And it's actually how I feel. So I'm hoping that now I can say, yeah, I don't want that anymore, and just set it down. Judgment be damned. Judge away. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is where you and I are different, in part because you're a much more optimistic person than I am.
I am. I'm so optimistic. I'm trying to think of, except, in relationships that have gone really bad. I can't think of anything that I've just not wanted to do. I guess I'm more curious. Yeah. So I just kind of go towards what's ever appearing in front of me, I guess.
Whatever is shiny. Yeah, I like that about you.
Yeah.
What do you know now that you did not know before you were 50 that you kind of wish you had?
How much people are truly, this is going to sound so Pollyanna. I don't know if that's really who I am, or you just bring it out in me. How much we all have in common as people. I think whether it's anxiety, if you're thrown into a situation, and I think maybe I learned this really quickly when I was in that completely new situation of being a city commissioner. I mean, that was like apples and chainsaws from my previous experience. And I learned pretty quickly, walking into a meeting with big, scary, important people, that, how similar, and this just sounds so elementary, but how really similar we all are as people. And it just took away so much of that intimidation and not feeling like I necessarily belonged at that table, or nervousness or whatever. It almost, just a few months in, it I felt myself turning the corner from being nervous coming into a situation just because it was so unfamiliar to me, and intimidated by Mr. Bigwig, whatever, to finding myself putting them at ease
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the situation.
Yep.
So, and now I just don't really have any of that anxiety anymore. It's nice to just have all that behind you. And I think it comes from just being put in those situations a lot. I think in the course of a normal career, let's say you're a teacher, you get used to dealing with parents, with administrators, with kids, and that's your world.
Yep.
If you get thrown into a completely different world, it takes a while to just, whoa, what am I doing here? And how do I navigate?
Yeah.
So I guess just basically dealing with people, ultimately, what else is there?
Well, it's true. And that's why it's actually not a Pollyanna statement. I mean, yesterday, Bill Thomas was on and he said one of the big lessons he's learned is like, just be nice. Be nice to people.
Yes.
And he said that's a platitude and it kind of sounds stupid. It actually doesn't, because A, we've kind of become conditioned to not be very nice. And B, everybody is kind of doing the best they can, even if it feels like it's diametrically opposed to what you think is the best they could do. It's probably the best they can do because it's probably the best you can do. And I think that probably can't be stated enough, because it's really fun and easy. And I might be the acting local chapter president of us and them. So I think it's a really important reminder. I've watched you mellow on that tremendously. And you told me once, I don't know, 3 years ago, maybe, that you'd really stepped away from posting a lot of political stuff, engaging in a lot of active political stuff online because it wasn't serving you. And I remember thinking, oh, I should pay attention to this because it's not serving me either. As I said, Linda, you say something and I think, well, yeah, I can probably do that. So some comments from Bonnie Bowman. Linda, you're such a superstar.
Wow, Bonnie.
And she says, I'm so enchanted by the phrase apples and chainsaws. I was too. I'm going to find a way to incorporate that. I can give you the credit, of course.
No need.
And then from our friend John Z, what I love is that you're both strong personalities and yet you're very easy to relate to on many levels.
Oh,
wow.
Nice.
That's lovely, John. Thank you.
Great.
Oh, go ahead.
No, one little lesson that retired Fargo City Administrator Pat Zavrel told me one time is say thank you. And not like your mom. You're listening, Bonnie. I know my mom was the same way. I never write nearly enough thank you notes. I still don't. But just in the course of discourse,
yes,
to say thank you.
Yes.
And in whatever shape or form that takes. That was a big one. All these lessons just sound so dumb. It's like those wall decor with
live, laugh, love crap.
Yeah. It's just not more complicated than that, I guess.
Well, but I think that's why they continue to show up. Yesterday, I had a pre-recorded conversation with a friend, Gina Cox, and then promptly deleted the conversation, which was super devastating to me because I'm not sure we're going to get to re-record it. But she said a phrase that is also sort of simplistic, but is so beautiful. She said, here's what I think about now. Does this please me? Also very simple, but not, does it thrill me? Does it delight me? Is it, like the height of my passion? Just, does it please me? Well, if we all went through life and more often than not could say, gosh, you know what? This was a pleasing day. We'd be a lot less curmudgeonly. We would treat each other better. We would be a little less inclined to, scream at someone when they pass in front of us on the interstate poorly. All the things that keep us super agitated say a few thank yous, say a few, that was pleasant, be a little more half full than half empty. I'm going to have to listen to this conversation over and over and over again. Last question for you.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
What's been the most joyful aspect of, or joyful aspects since you turned 50?
So I'm just gonna, well, either whether it's 50 or 60, I think it's going to be the same thing. A feeling of liberation. I think sometimes people say, "Oh, I just don't care anymore. I'm just going to do whatever I want, and I don't care what anybody thinks," and la la la. And there's a certain element of that. Um, I think it's a little more layered than that because maybe our whole lives from adolescence onward is a journey of not caring so much about other people's judgment of us.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't simplify that too much. Just I'm going to do whatever I want and I don't care what anybody thinks. You take that to its logical conclusion, you're a sociopath. I'm not interested in that.
No.
But I think it's one of awareness. I am going to let go of the judgment I imagine people are doing, which is, I think, the flavor that holds us back.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly be aware of how my actions affect others in a good way or a bad way and be mindful of that. But still have the freedom and the liberation to choose paths that feel right.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that taking one path. I mean, there are some times where you have to choose a path that's going to mean hurting someone else. And to me, the only time you do that is if you just can't bear staying on that path. And then, it's on you to make that as pain-free as possible. So, we don't have to be martyrs going through life, but we don't have to be jerks about it either.
Right. Yeah. Linda Boyd, lovely conversation as always. I always leave with big takeaways. And now, luckily, so can everyone else.
Well, me too. So I appreciate it.
I will talk to you soon, but thank you so much, everyone else. I'll see you tomorrow.
Early happy birthday.
Thank you.